of the questions I get asked a lot by people who know me in real life is how I manage to teach my oldest son to work naturally. And what I mean by that is that when he walks in a room, he sees what needs to be done. As soon as we've eaten, he immediately starts sweeping the floor and keeping things clean. He notices things and he takes care of them, and he does it automatically. He doesn't really even know he's doing it. It's something that is innate. And I believe it probably comes from the fact that we have been doing something we call table chores for years and years and years now. We actually started these about 10 years ago when he was 8. And at the time, my thought process was I need to teach the kids what it takes to run a household. And I also need help. At the time, I had a bunch of little kids, and then I had my 2 older kids, and they were all I had to really help out, and I needed them to help get the house straightened back up. So we implemented table chores. And basically, what I did was, I think at the time I had a whiteboard, just this really small whiteboard. And I wrote Blake and Megan on the board, and Mom. I had my name on there too. And we had all of the chores put on that board that would have to do with cleaning up the dining room and getting it ready for the next meal, and also getting the kitchen in place. And I just divvied up those chores according to ability. Like I said, my son was 8 at the time, and my daughter was 5. So, she couldn't do as much as he could, and obviously he couldn't do as much as I could. So I took the bulk of the work, and then they had turns doing things that weren't quite so strenuous. So that's how we did that for a long time. And then as my little kids got older, we started adding them in. And as long as I could, I used that whiteboard and I just wrote out the names, and I had exactly what they were going to do on there. But then I realized that I needed to just make a table chores chart. And that's where we are now. We have a table chores chart, and everybody who is capable of helping out is on that chart. I'm going to show you that chart right now. So I will tell you that usually this is laminated. However, we just changed chores recently, so it is not laminated yet because I didn't want it set in stone. But this will go on the refrigerator, and it has everybody's names and their chores along with it. The reason we recently changed was because Blake is getting ready to go to college. And so I needed to reduce some of his chores. So he does not have as major chores as he once had. He will be home for meals, but I don't know how many times he'll be home for meals, and I know that he's going to be rushed for time, so I don't want him to have to do a lot every single time. I also have down at the bottom here, tidy up the house after table chores. And I'm going to be doing a subsequent video that talks about our tidying up time, so be looking for that. So on this list, I have taken everything that we need to have done in order to be cleaned up from the meal and ready for the next meal, divvied up between the kids. And there's 6 of the kids who are on this list. They are ages 5, 7, 10, 11, 15, and 18. You will notice on this list, I'm not on there anymore. And the reason for that is because I am ground control. I basically supervise, and I float from job to job, helping whoever needs help out. So I may be cleaning counters. A lot of times I'm putting away food. The child who's in charge of putting away food, he needs a little bit of help. But I will, I'm available to help out. I'm there in the kitchen with them, helping out. However, one reason that this works really well to not have me in the equation is because if ever I am called away, like I need to change a diaper, or I have a situation with the toddler, or something like that, or I'm traveling, my kids don't rely on me to do a piece of this. They know the whole thing is going to get done. They don't need Mom to do her piece before they can do any of theirs. And it keeps them from, not being able to get everything accomplished. So I come in, I make sure that everything is getting done the way it needs to be done. And I'm helping out. And this chart is on the refrigerator. Like I said, it's laminated. That keeps it from being, messed up and ripped and things like that. I will ask them, have you checked the list? Have you done everything on the list? And if they have finished, then they go directly to cleaning up the house, because after our table chores is when our tidy up time is, and we work for 15 to 20 minutes tidying up. But I said I'm going to do another video about that, so be watching for that. Let me just go over a couple of things on here. My oldest son, who's 18, he is wiping down the table and the chairs and the high chair. So he's getting out Aspen, our baby, and he's getting her, down on the ground, cleaned up, and then he's cleaning her high chair. And then he didn't, like I said, we just changed these chores. I typically have an older child do the wiping down of the table and chairs, because otherwise it just doesn't get done very well. So that's one word of caution there. And then he sweeps, and it says mop the floors, but basically I'm having him spot mop, which means he sweeps up the floor, and if he sees anything on the floor that needs to be taken care of, we have a whole pile of junk towels, and he will go in, grab a junk towel, wet it down a bit, and just kind of scrub up that spot. I'm not expecting him to mop the entire dining room and kitchen. That's done on Friday, and it's done very well. This is just a spot check to keep the floor from looking disgusting. And then he is taking out the trash. Megan is my 15-year-old, and she is rinsing the dishes and loading the dishwasher. And that's a pretty big job. And we do this 3 times a day. It's a pretty big job. So the only other thing she has to do besides that is to refill the Keurig and our Berkey, which is our water filtration system that I use. I just like the taste of that water better. So she's taking care of that. Then our 11-year-old is helping to bust the table, which basically just means she's taking any food off the table, any condiments that have been there, anything extra that's on the table. She's helping to remove that. And she is actually helping the 7 and 5-year-old to do that. So she's kind of the big kid helper, and they're the little kid helpers. And then she's washing extra dishes. And what that means is that anything that doesn't go in the dishwasher. Now, my 15-year-old's trying to convince me it's anything that my 15-year-old can't manage to get into the dishwasher, but that's not how this works. It's actually anything that should not go in the dishwasher. So, knives and wooden spoons. I'm trying to think what else. Anything like, teapots and stuff like that. She's handling those things that cannot go in the dishwasher. Now, sometimes I do have her do a large pot or a large casserole dish, because my 15-year-old hasn't been able to get it into the dishwasher, and I would just like to have the whole sink tidied up, because otherwise you've got dishes being left out. Sometimes we do have to leave dishes out to soak and things like that. But preferably I like to have, especially at night, I like to have a clean slate for the next day. And then the final thing that my 11-year-old daughter does is, because she's doing the extra dishes, she's the last one at the sink. So she wipes down the sink, she wipes down the counters, she wipes down the stove, microwave, and the outside of the refrigerator, because the little kids are opening the refrigerator door, they've got sticky, grubby hands. Usually the handles are pretty nasty, so she's taking care of that. And then my 10-year-old son is unloading the dishwasher, and he immediately goes from eating to unloading that dishwasher, because a couple of people depend on him to have his job done before they can really start on their jobs. So he unloads the dishwasher, and anything that's been laying out on the counters that is dish related, like when my daughter washes the extra dishes, they're laid out on these dishwashing mats that I'll link to in the description. We love these dishwashing mats. We get the extra large ones, which are still not large enough. We have 2 of those, and I think we probably could stand to have 2 more. But they're really great. They're a microfiber, and they're just fantastic. We love them. So he puts away all of that stuff. And then he puts away the food. So any extra food, if it needs to be transferred from the dish that we had it in and needs to be transferred to something smaller so it fits in the refrigerator better, he's managing that. He's putting foil and plastic wrap and stuff like that onto the containers that don't need to be transferred, and then he's putting them in either the main refrigerator in the house or the refrigerator out in the garage. And then his final thing is just to tidy up the counters, so when his sister comes in to wipe them down, she doesn't have to move anything or put anything away. He's just making sure it's all straightened up and orderly. And then the 7-year-old, he is bussing the table, like I said earlier. And then him and his brother, who is 5, they are tidying up the dining room. And what that means is that for some reason, well, wait, I know why. The dining room is always a mess. And that's because that's where we do our main homeschooling right now. I have a couple of bookshelves in there. I have their crates in there, or their cubbies where they keep all their work. I have their crayons and pencils and notebooks and stuff like that all on one side of the dining room, because we live in a fairly small house right now, and that was where it fit. So the dining room tends to have little bits of paper on the floor, and it has pencils and crayons and things like that just kind of laying on the floor. And the kids also like to play in there. So there'll sometimes be blocks or things like that laying around. And so the 5-year-old and 7-year-old are responsible for getting the dining room floor completely cleaned up so that my 18-year-old can come in and sweep and spot mop. And so that's worked really well. I do have to stay on them though. They get sidetracked very easily, especially if they have something that was on the floor that they need to leave the room and put away. Sometimes they don't come back. So I have to go get them and bring them back, which is another reason why I don't have specific jobs. My job is to be a floater and run around and supervise and make sure everybody stays on task. And then, like I said, as soon as you finish your table chores, you go right into the tidy up time. There is another video that I'm going to link to from here on my YouTube channel that I did several years ago of my kids doing the table chores. And it's rather humorous because they do get kind of loud and crazy. And honestly, there are times when I have to say, okay, guys, stay on task, because they're singing songs, they're jumping around, they're being crazy. But I sped up a table chore time a couple years ago, like I said, and it's pretty fun to watch. So you can kind of see how it goes, but every day is different. And like I said, I'm in and out trying to make sure that people stay on task. But table chores, I really do believe, is how this all started, with my son being able to see that there are certain things that have to be done. He has been doing this for 10 years, and he knows that this is the way it works. Now, my 15-year-old, she's not quite there yet. She's getting there. She's a little more artsy, so I think sometimes she just doesn't see what needs to be done. She's kind of, thinking about other things and in her own little world with stuff. But I do believe, by the time she's 18, I do think that she's going to be there as well. She's going to see that there are certain things that need to be done. And that's just the way it is. I think they grow up with that sense of responsibility and ownership for the household chores. And they realize that when something's out of place, it is so much nicer when it is back in place. And for me, having the table chores done and having that blank slate makes it so much nicer to cook in a kitchen that is a blank slate and is clean, and you have the dishes you need and the utensils that you need. The stove is clean, the microwave is clean, all those things. It's just a nicer environment, and you're more likely to want to cook in that environment. So I would highly encourage you to think of all the table chores that need to be done after you eat a meal, and then assign them to whoever is capable of helping you out. And if you only have little kids, you're going to be doing the bulk majority of it, but you can assign some small things, and they can start getting that ownership of those chores. And this is something, like I said, we do 3 times a day, every single day. They know what to expect. I will say, I do not change table chores, but about once every 6 months. And the reason for that is because I feel like the kids need to have time to do it automatically. They need to have time to get in that habit of, this is my chore. And I have found that when we switch chores, they almost always naturally try to do their old chore. And I have to remind them, wait a second, check your list. Another thing too is that you must not complain. Do not complain about your chores because you will have to have that chore longer if you complain about it. And I also have one other rule that I had to implement, and that was if you're going to take a bathroom break, it better be quick, because I was finding that I had certain children who took a bathroom break right after they ate, and they were there for a really long time, and everybody was trying to get their chores done, but they were depending on the other one to come back, and they weren't coming back in a timely manner. So my rule is, if you got to take a bathroom break, great, just make it fast, please. So those are kind of the ways that we've implemented this. It's been fantastic. It has been a great way to get things taken care of. My kids, even when we go out to eat, you will find them stacking plates and busting the table and checking around. And, it's just there again, it's an automatic, natural response that they have begun to create this pathway in their brain that when something's out of place, we fix it. So I hope you'll try implementing some table chores and see how it goes for your family. I'd love to hear about it down in the comments section.